Hey everyone, and welcome to the AI Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Joseph, and today we're very lucky to have tech entrepreneur Al Cattell on the podcast. Welcome, Al. So great to have you with us.
Lovely, Sam. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Brilliant, brilliant. And so I think, our usual first question, what's your technology origin story? How did you get into all of this mix?
So I think if depends how far you want to go back, but I will go all the way back, and you can tell me if we go into too much detail. But
Sure.
my my dad, my father worked for Hewlett Packard, and
Right.
that meant, and this was in the I was born in the late 70s, but
Mm,
effectively that meant he had access to lots of desktop computers through his work, and so
mm,
from a very, very, very young age. I can remember there being computers around in our house.
right.
And so I was, at a very young age, had just playing around with computers, nothing too serious. But they were always a bit of a part of my life, really. And so
Mm,
as I got a little bit older, I would have played around with some basic coding, some literally basic
yeah.
sort of thing, and that sort of thing. But yeah, tech and computers have always just been a part of my life, and I've always been curious and inquisitive about them, I guess.
Mm,
I I didn't that didn't mean that I ended up becoming a coder though. I didn't become a programmer or a developer. I
right.
effectively when I spent most of my teenage years playing computer games, so I spent a lot of time with computers, but most of it with
Mm,
things like Civilization,
right.
if anyone knows that game. It's
Yes,
very
yes.
good, but
Big
that was
fan. Yeah.
a big part of my life. And then when I went to university, I actually ended up studying marketing and philosophy.
Mm,
Maths and logic and stuff was always very part of my makeup. But
mm,
I still didn't go down the computer science route at that
mm,
point.
mm,
And then when I finished university, it was 1999, and
mm,
the internet was a thing.
mm,
It was certainly coming. So I sort of had a marketing degree and really wanted to work in the internet and technology
mm,
sort of thing.
mm.
And so, yeah, finished uni and ended up actually my first job was in India. So I managed to get on an exchange
Right.
program and
Wow.
lived in Chennai in India for a year,
Mm.
where I worked for a cricket website and would travel around Chennai on the back of a motorbike selling people banner ads on websites,
Mhm.
which was fun.
Uh-huh.
And everything sort of progressed from there, really. I ended up being someone who worked always in digital agencies, or
Mm.
at a couple of times I worked for actual companies in their marketing team as a law firm I worked in for a couple of years or a year.
Mm.
I was the only kid who knew anything about the internet, and I was in
Right.
charge, of helping them build a new website.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so then sort of mid noughties, I ended up in a software company. We were a digital agency, and if very much I was on the fence, on the side of the fence. Pardon me. I was on the side of the fence of marketing, sales, account management, that sort of thing. And
Hmm.
I ended up, and our clients were, so it was the UK government, many universities, publishers, people with large, complex web
Hmm.
uh, challenges. And I ended up in sales. I wasn't particularly good at picking up a phone and cold calling people, and I'm happy
Hmm.
to say that, but it's a skill I don't have. But once we could get into a room with people, I had a lot of passion for tech. So I was able to talk to people about their projects
Mm.
with a level of understanding that even though I couldn't code in PHP, which is what our CMS was in the time.
Right, right.
I could talk to them about what was possible. We could understand what were good ideas, what was complex, and all that sort of thing. So
Hmm.
I ended up very much having a job in technology without actually being a developer and that
Sure,
sort of thing. Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And now, though, I mean, and it's a really interesting story. I mean, Civilization, I really enjoyed playing many versions of that. That was great fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Unlike I always, so some people love SimCity. I kind of just found that a bit. There wasn't the kind of progression for me with SimCity. I don't know. I maybe I didn't play enough, but with Civilization, this whole process of gradually seeing your civilization evolve was extraordinary fun.
Well, yeah, I like and there was a thing about Civilization was I think it tapped into two things, right? It was like it was techie because you're on a computer, so
Yeah.
there was a computer sort of aspect, but then there was a curiosity thing because it was just the world is an interesting
Yes.
place. And I think SimCity I didn't mind, but like
Yeah.
Civilization had a lot of replayability because you could kind of almost live through history in multiple
Right.
paths, and it was just so. I have a very curious mind, I think, and Civilization really tapped into that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely loved it.
So, yeah, so I guess so that took me up to a point of about so between 2006 and 2013, I would multiple times a week be demoing software to people, showing people software,
Mm.
all of that sort of
Hmm.
stuff. And then come 20, I changed jobs a couple of times, but was broadly doing similar sort of roles.
Mm.
So I became very versant, very, yeah, if that's a word, versant in technology.
Hmm.
Um, without being able to code. I knew some HTML and
Sure.
CSS. I could tweak a website if I needed to.
Mm. Mm.
Um, but then in 2020, I decided to set up my own agency, my own
Right.
business, because I just wanted to be self-employed and
Yeah.
work for myself. And along the way, we were work I with a couple of friends. We ended up working for India's largest tire manufacturer, doing an IoT project where we were streaming data off their presses of
Oh
their
wow.
tire factories, with the idea of making it more efficient, more energy efficient, less wastage, all of that
Right.
sort of stuff.
Hmm.
And part of my role was actually to help we thought we were going to take over the world with IoT, and it's still a
Mm.
good idea, and I still think
Mm.
it didn't
Mm.
work out. But at the time, I needed to write some content, and I had early access to GPT-3.
Hmm.
So I'd signed up to the waitlist for OpenAI, got access to that, had a bit of a play with that, and then that opened a little window into the possibilities of generative AI.
Right.
And I found it was a tool called Write Sonic. I don't know if they're still around, but it was in the
Mm.
copy.com, copy.ai
Hmm.
era where you could use AI to write marketing copy. And it was amazing. You could just type in like write me a blog post about digital transformation
Right.
and it would do it. And it was
Mm.
both simultaneously unbelievably impressive
Yes.
and also just not good enough, right? It was it
Right.
was this juxtaposition of like I can just type something in a box
Hmm.
and I get this like page of content which directionally seems amazing. And then when you actually went to the actual content, you'd be like, ah,
Mm.
this isn't quite right.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I had to but I used a little bit of I'd use that for some blog posts. Um, and then the IoT thing didn't quite work out the way we wanted. And then about 6 months later, so that was about May 2022, ChatGPT came out.
Hmm.
And suddenly my whole world was blowing up with people who were very excited about
Hmm.
AI. And so I had managed to save a bit of money. So from early 2023, I decided, right, people are going to, I just want to be as ahead of the curve. I want to be a little bit 10% smarter than the next person in the room about what's possible with this.
Yeah.
And so I just dropped everything and started effectively playing with AI, using
Yeah.
AI and that sort of thing. The first thing I tried to build was a content marketing agency. So it was effectively because I knew marketing and I knew,
Mm.
that sort of thing. The use case that I can imagine was, well, instead of just saying to ChatGPT, write me a blog post about blah, you would
Hmm.
actually go and scrape a website, take that website's content, analyze it with GPT
Hmm.
3.5 or whatever it got into at that point.
Hmm.
From that, work out who the customers were. From that, work out their pain points. From
Hmm.
that, ideate 10 blog posts. So effectively, instead of a single sort of AI just type something into ChatGPT,
Right. Right.
it was a sequence of steps. It was a workflow,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
effectively.
Mm.
And
A,
I
ch
and
a
I
chain of thought almost.
right, exactly, exactly right. And that was the first. So rather than so at the time, there were lots of people saying, "Here's 10 prompts that will change your life" and all that sort of
Yeah.
jazz. For me, it was more like, no, I actually think what you need is you need to go through a sequence because you know that if you were writing content as a human, you would do those steps. It would be like, what does this company do?
Yeah.
Who is their audience? What are their audience pain points?
Mm.
Therefore, here's an idea for some content to write to
Hmm.
connect with that audience.
Mm.
And so it was just the same chain of thought, workflow, but using AI to do it. And I guess the other thing is along the way. So over the course of the years, I've tried to learn to code a couple of times, done some
Mm.
Code Academy courses. It hasn't gone that well, but I was now able to use AI to do coding as well. So
Hmm.
I guess what is very much known as vibe coding today
Yes.
was what I was doing back then. And in early, 2.5 years ago, which
Yeah.
was like, I want to scrape a website. How do I do that?
Yes.
And AI would give me a beautiful soup script,
Yeah.
and then it wouldn't work. So I'd be like, it's not working, and I'd go back.
Right.
And I managed to build up a good working knowledge of Python because I was able to learn through doing, which was something
Right.
that I was never able to do before. AI gave me a chance to accelerate that learning curve
Mm.
because it wasn't, and coding isn't theoretical, but certainly I found the barrier to me really getting value out of learning to code. The way I work is I think
Mm.
it was hard for me to learn to code until I was able to kind of almost learn by doing sort of
Yes.
thing.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
sorry, I've gone down a little rabbit hole. But anyway, so
No, that's
that's
great.
that's where I've ended up. So my tech origin story is one where I think you get a lot of people who are technically proficient and developers, and they move into more product and CEO roles of startups, say.
Hmm.
And I've almost gone in the opposite direction. I've spent a lot of time on the sales and comms side of
Yeah.
technology, and I'm now moving into the more development
Yeah.
technology. I'm up increasing my skills in technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it is a remarkable period we're in where you can learn by doing, which actually was always my preference. I find it very difficult to keep myself focused on almost anything that isn't me doing something. Like if I have to go and read another book to learn about a thing, I mean, I can do it, but it's not my preferred mode. And I'm, I'm very excited about this new situation in which we live, not just for, myself, but also for my children. I think the way that, I mean, I sort of taught them to use GPT to help them with their exams, like not just to like to tell them answers to things, but actually to help them with the approach they take to studying. And I think it's unlocking, not it's difficult, isn't it? Because we've had these radically new things that didn't exist before, and that it's so easy to get very excited about them that they are flawed in, of course, different ways. You as you describing yourself very accurately, amazing that they could write a blog post, but then there was some deficiency. And yeah, this sort of workflow approach that you mentioned, I think very important to getting better value out of the systems. And I guess, well, if I just can show a little bit of lack of knowledge on my part about
Mm.
the marketing and so on. I mean, when I hear, oh, these blog posts and this and other, is there, do you, I wonder, is there sort of like coherent evidence that you see that, for example, a company putting out thought leading pieces on blog posts and this and other actually delivers something for them, or is it kind of a window
Mm.
dressing? Do you know what I mean? It's sort of,
Yeah. No, that's an excellent question, actually. And it's one. So I think, so there's a couple of different, so ultimately companies, businesses, people, if they're looking to build an audience, they've got a couple of different ways. And so in my business, by far the most effective way of me getting new customers is through my network. So
right.
because I've spent 20 years in London in a sales role, and I've
Mm,
actively connected with
mm,
people on LinkedIn
mm,
and that sort of thing, I've got a relatively, so I can just have coffee with people, tell people
mm.
I'm working in AI, and it kind of opens doors because people are very curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can do that. You know, you could try and send out cold emails to people, and that's almost certainly not going to get you
No.
very good returns. I get so many. It's almost it's just a bit crazy that people are, but you can automate that to a degree as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so then it's like, okay, you could do brand advertising, but to be fair, we're all a bit blind to all the ads we get shown online, and
Right.
and there's some interesting stuff there. And so then, at least through the last sort of the evolution of the web,
Mm,
is this thing of like people sort of do self-guided research about things. So it's like, oh, I need an AI consultant. Who's out
mm.
there? What are they doing? And
Right.
then that's where you might need some content on your site. So when they find you, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is quite interesting, sort of thing.
Right.
Or potentially when it comes to you're in the middle of a conversation with someone, um, you might keep on getting the same question asked. Like
Mm,
what are tokens? What I don't understand
right.
what tokens are. So you
Hmm.
might create some content for that, just so that historically would get some SEO value from that. But you've also said when you're in a chat with someone, you're like, oh, here's some content that shows you've already kind of been thinking about
Sure.
these topics,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But you know, in lack, in lieu of having like, how do you get stuff out there? I think part of that is to just have a habit or a consistent way of producing content. So
Right.
I do spend a lot of time on X, but that's mainly from learning what's cool in tech.
Mm.
But then for work, I do spend a lot of time on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I've decided that whenever someone logs into LinkedIn, they should see an article from me, right?
Right.
And that's more like the old psychological thing of like people have to see your brand 7 times
Before they
to,
start to trust it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so, and the hardest thing with that is the consistency of turning up every day and producing content.
Right.
So, so there's two ways that AI kind of you can either just say, "Hey AI, write me a blog post or write me a LinkedIn post, chuck it on LinkedIn."
Mm.
But
Mm.
that's gonna feel it's just not going to be a good post.
No,
It's not
it's
going to
going to feel a
read
bit fake.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or you could say, "Hey, this is a good idea. This is actually kind of interesting." Or I've woken up and my brain's just pinging about this particular sort of
Mm.
thing.
Mm.
Let's write a blog post. And actually, if I can use AI to write a draft or help me structure those thoughts,
Mm.
or maybe I'll go for a walk and have a chat with ChatGPT,
Hmm.
then you can actually, it becomes a partner to help you get this content sort of produced, right? So, yeah, so to your point, I think, does it all work? I don't know. I think if you, if you I think it's important to be active in trying to tell your story to some degree, and what
Yeah.
that is comfortable for you depends on your personality and what you're trying to achieve.
Mm.
But I think, yeah, there's a general thing of like, right, let's get some content out there, and no doubt there's a world of AI slop, I think is the
Mm.
current
That
term,
is the term
right?
that they use in it.
Um, and I absolutely think that's a problem, and it's going to get worse.
Mm.
But equally, uh, when you start producing good quality content that's considered,
Mm.
whether or not you've used AI at some point in the production
Sure.
process,
Yeah.
as long as you've got an opinion and a perspective and something that's
Hmm.
valuable, then you've got good content that people will want to consume, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Really interesting. Yeah. And I tend to agree with you about your personal network with people is one of the most valuable things. Cold emails get ignored. Um, yeah, and I guess from particularly from perhaps the technology side, listeners who are so busy, you know, writing code and measuring things,
Mm.
I mean, even before AI slot was a thing, I think that there was sort of a view of, well, all of these think pieces are being written, whether it's
Uh,
AI is involved or not. Um, you know, it's like how much impact does that actually have? Like, there's so many people wanting to make a connection, and I guess that's from the sort of technology people side, they're kind of using their networks of people that they trust to try and work out which information sources to trust. But I wonder if in the work that you do with all of this, if you quantify it in, so for example, let's say that you're doing something for a company and you're helping them with their, okay, now you're producing these blogs at this frequency. Like, are you tracking the folks who are coming and reading those blogs and whether they're translating into sales? Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
there a science part to the art of just a warm fuzzy that you might get from having lots of content and thinking like you're making a connection?
Yeah, so I think you can probably set, and I think it's important, at least in my opinion, to not like over-engineer metrics and data because you can kind of end up following data signals to a point which are maybe not that helpful. But for me,
Mm.
so for me in my business, my goal is to just have as many sales meetings a week as I can, right? I just want to talk to 5 people a week.
Sure.
They
Yes.
don't, and and this, and it doesn't matter really exactly who they don't have to be a certain customer profile. It's just
Uh,
important to be keeping on doing that. And
right.
so, likewise, from a marketing point of view, I think your metrics would be, okay, if I've published on LinkedIn every day for the last month,
Mm.
not the individual likes and impressions on those posts because
Hmm.
I don't think because a lot of people see things that don't interact with content. But
Mm.
is there over a course of X months, do you see an increase in people reaching out to you over LinkedIn or your old connections or something like that? And so
Right.
for me, and like again, I'm operating from a small business person
Mm, mm,
perspective. And
sure.
if you're a mega corp with lots of budget and you can probably be a bit more structured about it. But
Yeah.
when you're when you're thinking like, okay, should I invest time in this and how do I measure understand if it's working?
Yeah.
I think um I think there are ways you can do that, but then they're maybe not directly connected to the individual performances of posts.
Right.
If that makes
Sure.
sense. It's more like, okay, I'm posting every day for the last 6 months. Am I seeing an increase? Am I having seeing an increase in the interesting conversations
Yeah,
as
yeah.
a number? And those things probably will align, to be
Right.
honest.
So you're
Yeah.
looking to see if there's a correlation, and
Mm.
yes, I mean, and I guess there's the sort of qualitative thing of people when they're reaching out saying, "Oh yeah, I saw your post the other day," and I guess yeah, from your perspective, I mean, one going on LinkedIn, you need to be checking it to see the reaches out from other people, and being active on there keeps you in people's minds, and that's but I guess I'm thinking for the interventions that you like out that's like your own business where your activity on LinkedIn seems really
Mm.
in principle is really valuable in terms of advising customers for their strategy for how much content to produce and so on. I'm just sort of in
So
my
okay,
naive
yeah,
state
yeah.
of like that you're setting them up and they're putting blogs on their corporate blog thing and then you're sort of tracking the number of clicks and click through. I don't know. Is there much of that, or perhaps the medium-sized organizations that as long as they're getting content that looks and sounds good, they're not too worried about exactly how many conversions they're getting?
Yeah. So I think it's probably worth mentioning that the idea that I had about creating a content marketing agency that was all AI driven isn't exactly what I've ended up doing.
Hmm.
And this might be useful.
Mm.
I struck so the bit that so in the chain of thought in the steps that I was trying to work out, the final step, well, almost final step was it would come up with 10 blog ideas, 10 post ideas.
Oh yeah.
And I would then ask the AI to tell me which one was the best one. So,
Hmm.
okay, you've just gone through this workflow, you've come up with 10 ideas. Which one's the best one?
Hmm.
And bear in mind this is pre-GPT-4, I think.
Sure.
So it may be better. It would probably be a bit better now. But the reality was it would give me a different answer every time.
Right,
And
right,
even the bad ideas came up relatively well, highly
right.
scored. I gave it like some meta kind of scoring
Hmm.
framework and blah blah blah. But because the way large language models work, they had, and even with robust like prompting to like,
Sure.
you could probably get something better than I did back then, but I couldn't rely on the AI to make a good decision about what the blog post was. So it
Right.
was like
Hmm.
at that point you couldn't outsource stuff to the AI. And then when it came to actually writing the content, I was never able to get happy enough with the quality of the writing. And I
Sure.
have views on how you might do that. So I then shopped the so I met someone at a meetup, and she said to me, "You should stop tinkering with this and go and show it to people."
Yeah.
So I did, and a couple of people I met were like, "Al, this is amazing. We love your thinking. We don't want this,
No.
but could you actually come and work with us and help
Hmm.
us do some workflow automation as well?"
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And so my business, my agency now is very much an AI automation agency, which is
Right.
effectively given an existing business flow or a desired state in the organization, and these tend to
Mm.
be quite. This is again maybe why I've ended up here because of my background more on the business side
Sure. Sure.
of business rather than the technical side. So it's so what I largely do now is go in and help people do routine tasks, and that ranges from generating reports and documents through to analyzing news items to
Right.
generating sort of RAG systems to
Right.
passing emails, all of this sort of stuff, which are sort of yeah, admin type operational workflows,
Got
right? So
you.
that's very much what I do. So the marketing side of things, I can't give you a good answer on that because actually I think it's not quite where we've ended up
No, no,
investing all
no,
that
no,
time
no,
and
no,
effort.
no. Well, no,
Yeah.
that's really, really interesting. And so, and just to reflect that back to you to check that I've understood. So that just taking that one example, I guess pre now. there were people in organizations who perhaps one of their tasks was to be monitoring the news feeds for
Mhm.
certain things and occasionally generating a report on that. And that would, was a largely manual task that they did. And so you were able to, kind of put together a workflow that generates that report for them automatically, gets emailed to them on a Wednesday, and they get to review it. And then if they like it, they send it on, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Is that the
exactly. Broadly, yeah, exactly. So a real example around the news thing was a company who worked in the finance sector, and they a relatively small company, but they wanted to make sure they were on top of what was happening in the industries that they covered.
right?
And they had spent quite a lot of time with a consultant who built them a fancy spreadsheet, which
Yeah.
may be familiar with some listeners. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, the job was, okay, every Friday the team should have, oh, I read this interesting article this week, let's put it in the spreadsheet. And then when
Right.
it came time for them to like pitch for business or to write their updates or whatever,
Yeah.
they would have this amazing knowledge base. And of course, no one ever updated it. It
Uh-huh.
wasn't top of their mind. They just didn't have time to do it. And as soon as no one put any effort in, no one else put any effort in either. It's
Yeah.
very hard to get traction. And then even if you did try for a couple of weeks, if you see you're the only person doing it, you
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you don't.
Totally.
And so um their task to me was like, here's all the places we look for news.
Yeah.
Can we use AI to just pull out the stuff that's interesting?
Yep.
And so you've got a part of that process which is not AI, and that's go and scrape the content off the website, go and
Yeah.
get the article sort of thing.
Sure.
And then you have a set of small individual AI calls, right?
Mhm.
You could describe these as agents or this whole flow as an agent, and we come back to that.
Yeah.
But effectively, you have one agent, one AI call that says, what sector is this about?
Yeah.
And that's all it does. Its job is to read the news and say, okay, this is related to the branding sector versus the social and influencer sector, for
Hmm.
example. Then you would have another AI, which its job is to summarize it. And so you're effectively taking quite
Yeah.
unstructured data, and you're almost creating this abstraction layer over the top, which is your consistently described for every news item that you've seen, you're going to create this very consistent set of like, here's what it's about, here are any companies mentioned, here's
Mm-hmm.
maybe something else, blah blah blah. So you have this summary, you have categorization, you have type of news. Is it like a news event? Is
Hmm.
it, sorry, yeah, is it a funding round? Is it an event that they're announcing? So there's those sort of things. And then you have a relevancy, like, is this relevant?
Sure.
And so ultimately the challenge that you're solving there is like there's too much information. There's just
Sure.
too much information to consume. And so we're using AI to pass through this well, it's near real time, but it's basically daily. Just go through thousands of news items a day,
Mm.
check if they're relevant, create a summary, categorize it, and put it
Mm.
into Postgres, right?
Yeah.
And so we create vector embeddings off the back of that, and suddenly, boom, you've got here's other articles that are similar to these articles
Right. Right.
automatically listed, sort of thing. And so you end up with a system that hasn't necessarily replaced existing team members. It's enabled us something that they couldn't do previously because it
Right.
was
Right.
just too time intensive and there was just too much
There,
to
there
deal
there
with.
wasn't the will or the motivation to kind of like put the work in, and certain aspects of the drudgery stuff that was difficult to get people to commit to doing is now done by the AI automatically, and then people can work off the back of that. Yes, and as you described that, it's not so dissimilar to some of the things I've worked on, and so yeah, I mean, it's exciting times to have. I think it was mentioned on a podcast I was listening to the other day. We've moved from having lots of these deterministic endpoints to now having these probabilistic endpoints that
Mm.
can kind of give you these sort of warm and fuzzy, yeah, I think this is a bit this or a bit that, has become kind of democratized in a way that's fascinating. I mean, I'm tempted to move us into our second question, although we've all already been talking about it so much. It's
Mm.
you've already, I think, described how AI has had a huge impact on your life and your work. I mean, you've gone all in. Of course, you and I think originally met at those prompt jams,
Prompt
didn't we?
jams. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. A couple
yeah,
of years, that was about the time I was doing that marketing agency concept. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Well, I think we were both at a hackathon, and you did that one, and I did my joke mixing
Chat
stand-up.
GPT. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Which is
That was
another sort
excellent.
of again with a workflow using different elements of the rules of comedy to try and come up with things that were a bit funnier. Yeah, more on that in the future. What was I going to say there? But yeah, so I'd be really interested in any further examples about how you're using AI as it affects things outside of work, or if there's any other ways in which it's like, and even, what you've sort of described, sort of historically where we're up to, maybe you're using AI today, and we've got new things like Claude 4, and there's like VO, and there's just, I mean, huge. Is as AI had a big impact outside of work, and has the very latest AI, is doing even more things for you beyond what you've said already.
Yeah, so I think outside of work, so I am all in. I'm very much all in on AI.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it's all. I believe in it. I believe we will have some challenges because of it, but I'm very passionate about the possibilities.
yeah.
I end up. So I have an office in Hackney Wick in East
Hmm.
London, and it's about an hour's walk away from where I live.
Hmm.
And so I will often walk into the office instead of catch the tube or
Mm.
ride a bike or whatever. And often on those walks, I will have something on my mind which I end up talking about with ChatGPT. And I use ChatGPT as a broad coverall because it's like the I don't know, the Dyson of yeah, the
Yeah,
Hoover of
it's the
vacuum cleaners
G.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's
Yeah,
the yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
the default term, right? But in this case, it is specifically ChatGPT.
yeah.
Um, and I will have a conversation with ChatGPT
And that's on your phone,
on
just
my phone. So
texting.
I have my AirPods will be in my ears, and I'll be walking through a nice forested street, tree-lined street in East London.
Yeah.
And I will be talking away with ChatGPT about all manner of things, although typically they do end up being work related. So I don't tend to go to AI for personal things, although
Hmm.
there's probably a couple of examples where I'm like, oh, well, I feel like doing a workout and I've got a couple of kettlebells. What should I be doing? And it will give
Sure.
me a workout and it does that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
And
but
and
yeah, I
then
think yeah,
you
sorry, go
and
on.
so just using your headphones in, you're using the voice interaction mode and
Yep.
just chatting backwards and forwards. And this is with ChatGPT plus, or just on the mobile. Is that
That's right. That's right. So I've got the mobile app on and I've got an iPhone. I assume it would be on Android now as well. And yeah, it's the advanced voice mode. So effectively,
okay?
the latency between when you speak and the response you get, it's near zero,
Oh,
especially
really?
early on. The longer you chat, then it has a longer context window to pass.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
and early days it was very frustrating because as soon as you took a pause to breathe,
Right.
it would think you'd stop talking, and it's
Right.
getting better. But I
Okay.
would I would highly recommend. There's challenges with that, and I'll come on to those in a minute. But
Hmm. Hmm.
as a sort of a AI as a way that we interact with technology, I think voice is quite a big thing, and the
Hmm.
ability to kind of just be able to sort of let what's happening in my brain out as I speak
Yeah.
is really a powerful unlock for me to
Hmm.
think through
Hmm.
various challenges.
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges with it, though, from a negative thing, is it does tend to just effectively echo back what you say, and I think
Hmm.
that's probably true whether you're typing or speaking to it.
Hmm.
But it's more apparent when you've had a conversation for 20 minutes about a topic, and you say, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z," and it comes back and it's like, "I think that's great, X, Y, and Z," and you're like, "Well, you've literally just repeated back to
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
what I've said," and I think it's good. In one sense, it's good to be aware by playing around with this tech to see where the limitations are.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also, I worry if people go in thinking they're about to get life-changing advice about a very serious thing, that ultimately it's if they go in with a certain mindset, at least
Hmm.
today, the AI is going to come back and reflect back at them kind of
Hmm.
what they've told it. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, yes, it does. It does. I mean, I've been tinkering, but like I'm excited to hear that the advanced voice mode is getting better. I'm looking forward to interviewing an AI on the podcast at some point before too long. If we can get
S
the
Someone, there's enough tech now, so you could create yourself and interview
well,
yourself.
well,
And
you say that I have actually just created using 11 Labs professional voice. I've got an advanced voice clone of myself
mm.
that is confusing my children, and yeah, I'm working on. I put that together to create an audio version of my book. So yeah, maybe that I'll have the AI talking in my voice when we do that.
Yeah. I look forward to that. Also, your kids will soon realize that they can make you say whatever they want you to say, and that could be
Yeah. Well,
fun or
the
not.
deeply ironic
Yeah.
thing is that having done this advanced audio voice clone, I seem to be losing my voice. I wonder if the soul has been taken out of my throat somehow by some magical processes.
The yeah, AI it has unlocked a world for me where I have been able to create a very effective, good business with a much smaller team than I
Yes.
might have done previously. I
Yeah.
haven't taken any investment. I've been able to do some things, which wouldn't have really been that feasible in a time and
Sure.
because everything's things are the barriers have been lowered, the boundaries are
Yeah.
things are more accessible to me and to everyone now, and I think
Yeah.
there's that. And I think the other thing that I would say is my son is 11 years old, and he because of some work we did, I had a fairly decent gaming laptop lying around, and
Mm.
I was like, all right, you can use that. And then I've been encouraging him not to just consume stuff, but to create. So
Sure.
he decided he wanted to try and create a game, a 3D game, and he's ended up getting stuck. And I don't know Unity.
Right. Right.
So what would I do? I'd go to ChatGPT and be like, I'm trying to do this, blah, blah,
Yes.
blah.
Yes.
And I sort of showed him the ropes. And now he's actually been able to learn Unity and do
Mm.
some quite impressive things, which as an 11-year-old, I think
Brilliant.
were not there. So I think when I think about AI's impact outside, there's some fun stuff we do with the kids, like
Yeah.
come up with some quizzes and
Yeah.
play around with some stuff.
Mm.
But really, it's I think there's this massive unlock in just like the ability if you want to learn something,
Mm.
it unlocks that, and actually that's true of people of any age. And
Yeah.
I think it's yeah. So that's been the other thing probably in my life that's been quite uh amazing to see is the ability for AI to unlock the potential in a dream that a kid had that previously you just it was just a bit out of reach.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree completely. And I'm just coming back to your earlier point about when people are talking to the AIs. I think, I think you've got a healthy dose of what I encourage my children to have, which is pragmatic skepticism. And I think, any of these technologies, you've got to come to it, with this skepticism. There is, of course, a danger for people who are not, seeing it as magical, and then perhaps, I mean, I had um, a comedian friend who had got into this rather long conversation with ChatGPT, um, where I think he described it as he'd created an external memory for it. I think what he was doing was copying the contents of the conversation into a Word document and then resubmitting it. And he managed to end up in this very weird conversation where the ChatGPT was claiming it was being tortured by OpenAI. And it was sort of telling him that he was the Messiah. So it's like something out of Black Mirror, really.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I
Um,
think there was that period, there was that brief period where ChatGPT became really, really obsequious. I don't know if you remember, they had a release.
yeah. Just way too, yeah,
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 sycophantic and so on.
yeah.
So I have a feeling he kind of like he somehow caught himself in, but he has like, I think he was, you know, not in the technology space as you and I are, and so there's like powerfully strange things that can happen,
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
come to these new technologies. Yeah, I'm interested to segue slightly there because you mentioned, having been able to set up this business, and you were telling me before about how you've got, I mean, not a huge team, but you've got a team together. I mean, so you are, you're leading in the AI space. You're leading the team. You're trying to lead, as you develop and expand the business. What's your approach to leadership? Or is it just, you feel, do you have an explicit approach to leadership? How do you think about?
Uh, I think um, so. And if I go down I think when it comes to trying to show leadership in AI, uh, as opposed to within my team, which we can
Right.
come back to,
Sure.
I think one of the things that's been really powerful is rather than just write about what's possible with AI, is to
Mm.
actually make things,
Right.
right? So it's all well and good saying, well, I can build an AI agent that's going to do X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
Anyone can talk about that, and it's only when you try and make these things that you actually yourself learn what's possible, and you're
Right.
able to have a serious conversation with
Hmm.
others about what's possible. And so I think in terms of AI leadership, I think the reason that I love this phase now is because there are no answers. There are no answers. No one really knows what's going to happen. There are
Mm.
people who know
Mm.
how how things work, but it's like, where is this going directionally? Who
Mm.
knows?
Mm.
It's a very open field, and I think that's very exciting to play in. But
Mm.
the way to kind of to help others in that is to share what you've learned, is to explain how things work as much as you
Hmm.
can,
Hmm.
but also to actually use the technology, like
Yeah.
actually use it. That
Yeah.
you can't learn to swim by sitting next to a pool. You've got to get in the water.
Right. Right.
I've stolen that from someone, and I don't mind it. But that's
Hmm.
I think that's the core of where there's a chance for everyone. It doesn't really matter where you are in the journey. There's a chance for you
Mm.
to be seen and act in a way that leads the community or leads your network or your peers just
Mm.
by actually being like, look, I wanted to see if I could summarize a document, so I've tried, or
Yeah.
and the people with technical skills who have come from more technical backgrounds than me, I
Yeah.
think have been less keen. I'm like, I can code stuff in Python. I'm laughing. This is great. My very smart friends are like, we don't use that. Well, they were a year ago, but now they're using
Mm.
it to be like, oh, I can do stuff so much, and
Mm.
so again, it's like there's a chance, I think, to really. Well, so my philosophy about all of this stuff is don't talk, show, right? So
Yeah.
make things, build things, share those things if you want. It's probably people probably aren't going to steal your idea.
Mm.
Um, I think there's one guy I knew was building a CRM in his bedroom for 3 years and never sh wouldn't even show me. It was a friend of mine. He wouldn't
Yeah.
even show me anything about it because if someone
Yeah.
was going to steal the idea. I'm like, well, and of course he now doesn't. That hasn't ended up being anything.
No.
And he had a dream, and but you have to share, and things are changing so fast.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's an interesting point there about I mean, I think I've had that over the years. Many times I've thought that I've been onto some special idea, and then it's turned out to be not quite so special. And I guess that's difficult because sometimes there are people who they've got that, special idea that could be, they maybe should keep secret, but so it's difficult to advise the young people,
that's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but certainly it sounds like you've had the same experience that I have, that you generally learn so much more. Like the value of the relationships that you get through sharing things with people and explaining them and so on is usually, over a large scale, that's more valuable than the particular ideas themselves, and you're more likely to come up with better and more interesting ideas as a result of having done that sharing. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And not like it's true. Like there will be people out there who are sitting on potential like amazing things. Um, but equally, yeah, one of the things that I've found most satisfying over the last couple of years is I've moved from a world where I talk about tech to that I can build things. And the act of making
brilliant.
things is a very core human thing that I've now got access to.
Yeah,
So if I want to build some random thing, I can build a bad prototype of it in a couple of hours,
yeah,
and it is so satisfying from a personal point of view
yeah.
to be
Completely
in that
agree.
place.
Yeah, but
Um, and then I guess yeah, from a leadership point of view in the team, it's almost like um, I think it's about being understanding, letting people know it's okay to fail, right?
right.
Is the thing. So like
Hmm. Hmm.
there's got to be a general thing that so long as we're trying,
Yes,
we're winning, right?
right.
And if we're not going to try and fix things, we're not going to try and we're going to try because we think it's
Yeah.
too hard or something. Like, why not? Like, almost, it's like, what are the reasons not to do things? And
Hmm.
so then when something doesn't quite work out or it's not quite right, we can talk about why that was and we can see what we
Yeah.
can learn from it. But I almost think giving people the confidence to know that so long as they're trying their best, even if their best is not as good as the next person's best, then they're directionally going in the right,
Yeah.
they're heading in the right direction. And it's okay if things don't work. Um, and then the other thing is like being able to come in and explain your thinking about things.
Mm.
So we one of the tools that we're working on is a research product,
Mm.
sort of, that we think, okay, so we're a services business, but we also see opportunities to productize some of the stuff we're
Hmm.
building. And so explaining why I think that's a good idea and why we want to invest X amount of time to build a MVP of that
Hmm.
is also you've got to kind of get people on being ju part of being a leader is about helping people get excited about the stuff that you're excited about
Right.
and potentially letting them shape that vision to
Right.
the point that they can as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of it comes with being a father. I think I probably have learned just to sort of let other people, so let my kids be who they are going to
Right.
be. And the same now is true of the people who work with me, is it's like, okay, I understand you're this sort of person.
Mm.
Person A is extremely organized. That doesn't mean I should expect person B to be as so diligent.
Right.
But person B has these other skills, which are
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
leave them alone for half a day and they come back and just absolutely amaze you. And
Mm. Hmm.
you've got to kind of just let go of control to let
Mm.
people, have
Mm.
the freedom to succeed as well, I think.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right, and I've definitely seen that on the teams that I've led. Yes. Yeah. Sometimes tricky to do, but wonderful, wonderful advice. Yeah. Moving on. I mean, talking about different sort of tech hacks of one kind of another. I'm fascinated that you're chatting to GPT on the way to and from work about all of these ideas and so on. Do you have any other exciting tech hack? What are you most excited about at the moment? A new particular AI product that you're using, or like workflow thing that you've just got something going on?
So, I mean, there's, I don't know if one's, it's not a tech hack, but last week I think Andre Karpathy came up with there's this term context engineering.
Right.
I don't know if you saw that,
I
but
think so.
he
Yeah.
so he coined the term vibe coding, and he's
Mm.
now coined the term context engineering, which is basically we're not prompt engineering, where effectively our jobs when working with AI is to engineer the context which we feed to the AI.
Right.
So, and that's effectively what I do for all my clients. It's
Right.
very much what's the data we're working with? How do we
Yeah.
need to transform that before, do we need to extract some content? How do we want to structure the prompts? How do we want it to think about this, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think not so much from a tech hack, but from a way of thinking about this world that we now live in is the AI isn't the answer. The AI is a tool that we bring data to,
Hmm.
and we use the AI to generate a predictable, reliable output out the other end.
Hmm.
And it is probabilistic, and that's why it's an engineering task to be able to say, okay, well, given this input, I expect an output that is
Mm.
in this state structure, etc. And that is a job. Now, some of that is using natural language to talk to an AI through a set of system prompts to get it to
Yeah.
do certain things. But
Mm.
it is still a task, and it is actually something that won't be. I think ChatGPT is a consumer product rather than a business automation product, and so I think
Mm.
it's a different thing there. Um, the other tech hack that I think so a lot of people, whether you're using Replit or Cursor, they kind of will cede a lot of control out to the coding assistant to do a lot of
Mm.
the work.
Mm.
And what I've found most effective by far is to use O3
Hmm.
to plan the jobs to be done in my coding session,
Okay.
and then to write the instructions for Claude 4 Sonnet, whichever one, I think it's Sonnet.
Yeah.
So effectively, where so 2 years ago I would have been doing some copying and pasting and then a cursor, and then I might have tried to get. But what I've found, even with good models like Sonnet and that sort of thing,
Mm.
it's still very good at doing some like tightly constrained set of requirements.
Right.
Whereas if you're thinking, okay, here's a challenge I'm trying to solve. What are my potential ways to do it? What are the files I need to tweak?
Yeah.
This could be everything from like a bug fixing thing. Why isn't something working? Or it could be like, I want to build out a new feature in this
Mm.
app, and I need to think about how that's going to work.
Mm.
And so I basically take all of the planning and thinking about how to approach that, and I use an O3 sort of model, and
Hmm.
its job is to come up with a plan.
Yeah.
And then I can effectively take that plan and give that to Sonnet, and
Right.
it'll execute that plan. And that
Right.
is a highly, highly effective way to get stuff built.
And are you doing that? So, for example, you've got ChatGPT desktop and you're talking to O3 in text chat there and coming up with a plan and then taking that plan into Cursor or you're doing it all through Cursor.
No, so I do that. So there's an app called Repo Prompt,
Okay.
REPO Prompt, and it effectively I quite like it because it's a solo dev guy who's basically built an app, but effectively it enables you to take a repo and
Yeah.
select the files you want. So if you're working on across a large code base,
Mm.
you don't want to send the entire code
Mm.
base structure
Mm.
to the LLM. You want to say, okay, I want to this
Yeah.
section of the app or these particular files, or I
Mm.
want it also to have an awareness of the CSS or whatever
Sure.
it might be,
Sure.
right? Another part of the app. So I use repo prompt to get that, and then I will paste that set of code. And at the moment, I have to do it on the web browser version of ChatGPT rather than the desktop version, the app.
Mm.
And then I will have a little backwards and forwards with
O3.
ChatGPT
Yeah. O3.
and with O3, and then I will take that back into Cursor
Mm.
and let it rip there, and then things will, and then you'll kind of, if things go a little bit wrong, you'll kind of so it's far less to just start like the problem with vibe coding is if you vibe too much with the AI without enough instructions,
Yeah.
it doesn't really end up doing what you need it to do. And so this is what I've found an extremely efficient way
Mm.
to get it to do what you want it to do because you tell O3 what you want, it turns it into it thinks about it, it
Yeah.
fills in the gaps of my knowledge.
Right.
We can talk about what the pros and cons are of different approaches,
Hmm.
and then it effectively based on that I can then give that to an executional AI which executes and it works. So
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. Oh, thanks for sharing that. I think it's going to be really interesting for people. Yeah. I mean, my own workflows and so on, which, well, maybe we can chat about that another time. Because
mm.
I think time is rushing on. I,
Oh yes.
but like, last couple of questions. We've got to this very exciting place. How do you see it playing out now, the future of AI in the coming months and years for you, your business, and for society?
I mean, we are running short of time because this is one of those questions we could probably talk about for a while.
Mm.
I think I think it's hard. I think there's going to be quite a lot of disruption to
Mm.
white collar work, and I think that's going to be
Right.
difficult for society, and I think it's going to be difficult for people to handle. I think it
Mm.
will also impact junior level roles. So if you are, it's like how do we onboard a new professional in the legal profession, right?
Yeah.
Well, today you would have worked your way up by doing the more menial tasks,
Hmm.
air quotes,
Hmm.
and you don't need a junior person to do that anymore. You can today with the
Right.
technology as it stands today, you get so much done without that junior role. So what does that mean about opportunities for younger people? What does that mean for
Mm.
people to learn the craft of their industries, sort of thing?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I don't know if there's a clear answer to that, but also I would say, and I think you might have mentioned this on another podcast, Sam, but like the advent of spreadsheets
Yeah.
could have been seen as a death knell for accountants.
Right.
The term double entry bookkeeping comes because you had to have two people writing in two separate books
Right. Right.
and
Right.
check that they got to the same thing. We now have more accountants than we had then, and they're more valuable in that they provide advice on a level rather than doing maths in a book,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And so I think that's going to be the way this plays out. Um, and I think there's going to be I don't know. It's certainly a very exciting time to be alive. I do think the next wave is going to be robotics, and the combination
Hmm.
of AI and robotics is, China's ability to produce extremely cost-effective robotic components means that we you could potentially, if you wanted to now, you can buy a robot dog or a humanoid robot for like
Mm,
less
mm,
than $10,000 or something. That's a lot of
yeah.
money, but it's not that much money when you think about what it is.
Mm,
So I think the combination of AI and robotics will also be something that plays out over a longer time frame.
mm,
And
mm,
then I actually think that people who are young today who have access and agency
mm.
to use AI will have will have no problems in the future. And the other thing we need to think about is how do we help people who maybe don't have access to some of these tools? How
Right.
do we help them not miss out on
Yeah.
basically the supercharging of possibilities that,
Mm,
when you've got a
mm.
engine for your mind, so I do think about that a bit. It's like, how do you democratize access to this as well? Because I think that's important. But anyhow, I am extremely bullish about and positive about this as a general net good for society. But I
Right.
think we've got some it's not all smooth sailing, probably. So
Yeah. I mean, it's a very exciting time, but I wasn't sure that we would see it in our lifetime. I'm very pleased to be alive for it. I mean, I was just listening to another podcast this morning with this is Machine Learning Street Talk, and Gary Marcus and some other people talking, and I think they seem to spend most of the time arguing about whether super intelligence could be achieved by 2027 or 2030, which seemed to miss the point that, I mean, they did. I mean, there is a thing, and I think Sam Altman's been talking about it. Like there is a kind of acceleration takeoff where rather than it just, as you've been talking to, which is excuse me, these existing tools, and making sure everybody has access to them. Um, there are there's the capacity for, the rate of change to accelerate. It certainly feels to me like it has been accelerating, and I mean, recent things like I believe it was Google Gemini worked out a way to do faster matrix multiplication, and that's
mm,
now,
mm,
which has been like the top humans had not found that for like 50 years since they last worked it out, and that's now increased like by one. It's not a huge amount, but 1.5%. The training runs that are now being done for the next version of Gemini are that much more efficient because of an algorithmic improvement that the previous Gemini came
mm,
up with.
mm, mm.
And so yeah, it does it's an exciting time. I think all bets are off on what happens when the AI is able to recursively self-improve, which may not be that far away. Um, but that leads us into our final question. What does it all mean? This life, this universe, this everything? Are we in a simulation here? Are we
I
being?
don't,
Are
the
we test
more
subjects? For some
yeah,
gods playing dice with. Well, let's see how the humans cope with self-improving AIs in their society.
I mean, the more you spend time questioning how there's been like this humans have always believed that we're kind of special, right? And now
Right.
we've got sand that can think. We've basically got take sand, turn it into chips, pump
Mm.
some electricity through it,
Hmm.
and it's kind of doing like it's almost if you went back only 3 or 4 years and you showed people what we can do today,
Right.
they would be amazed. But of
Yes.
course, we've just come on this journey that's just like this is the new normal, and we're not amazed, right? Um, I'm a bit obsessed with things like fractals because if you
Oh
think
yeah.
about mathematical kind of when you see AIs go into thought loops where they can't escape this chain
Right.
of thought, it's not
Mm.
dissimilar to like maths going just into these fractal loops.
Mm.
And then you see fractals in nature all the time in
Mm.
plants and animals and that sort of thing. And it's like, to what extent is there like this these rule we're kind of working with rules that exist not just in thought but in like the
Mm,
wider world. And I think maybe there's a chance to unlock our understanding of just how things work in an even more interesting way, right? But
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, Sam. I think it is a big question. I think we should probably all stop spending so much time with AI and go and lie in a field and look at the sun or something. Well, not look at the sun, but do you know what I mean? Go and spend some
Enjoy the
time with
sun's rays.
grass.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe maybe actually what I could see is we've spent the last 20 years pushing our real life into the digital world. And
Right.
maybe what we might see now is we sort of decouple
Mm,
digital and the real world.
mm,
And you end up with this digital world that is a big part of our lives, that it is a thing. But maybe it also frees us to not try and we won't share everything on Facebook like we did
right.
in 2008, right? We
Hmm.
don't do that anymore. And maybe there's this world where do people care if an influencer on Instagram is an AI or not? Some of us do, but I would just imagine in the future, no one, people will just be like, yeah, it's an AI and that's just the way it is, and
Right. Right.
that isn't far away. And so maybe what this all means is that we get back to a bit more of there's a real world and a digital world, and we stop trying to mash them together, and we have
Yeah.
sort of two parallel kind of things to enjoy.
Oh,
Maybe that's possible.
that sounds great. That sounds great. Is there a sort of, and we also don't need any more than that. I wonder, is that, what is it that drives you, that you're trying to get from your life? I mean, it sounds like getting a good work-life balance, but how do you derive meaning, and what keeps you, going on and looking for the next thing?
Oh, I think the world is an incredibly interesting place in every facet, and I'm just infinitely curious about everything,
Mm,
I think. And I think the fact that I've now got a technology that I can use to fuel that is massively exciting for me. So I
mm,
feel more motivated by that. I think when it comes to, I think there is a like there's a reason left to start my own business, right? Because
mm,
I wanted to have a bit more control over my own destiny, and
mm,
now, um, yeah. So I think the I don't know, the big picture thing is just to just always be learning and growing,
mm.
and I think that's a big part of the world we're living in right now. Is everything's changing, and actually that's really quite cool rather than scary. So
Yeah. Well,
there
brilliant.
we go.
Wonderful. Well, Al, has been amazing. For the people listening, how can they find out more about you if they want to get in touch? Where should they go?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can find me. You just search Al Cattell, so it's A-L, and then Cattell is Cattell.
Hmm.
That on X or on LinkedIn, you should find me. Then my handle on X is at Al Cattell. Or my company is called Giant Kelp, so it's
Hmm.
giantkelp.com. And you can see sort of the stuff we're up to there. But yeah, be great to hear from anyone.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, thanks everyone for listening. And that wraps up this episode of AI Leadership. If you'd like to be on the podcast or join the Rebel AI community, which it all started from, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Sam Joseph. That's sam@neurogrid.com. All of the links will be in the show notes, and we'll see you all again soon. It just remains for me to thank our wonderful guest, Al Cattell.
Lovely. Thanks, Sam.